Senator. Good morning to you. I'm Art Lewis. Nice to have you with us. This is hour number two, and we are pleased to welcome to the program Congresswoman Kristen McDonald-Rivet. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, I love to be here, Art.
Well, we appreciate having you. We love it too. We love it too. So let's start with the budget process.
You want to start with a nice light topic?
Her aide Kevin is sitting with her. He's got a smile on his face, laughing.
Yeah, young. Yeah. It's let's just start with a complete dysfunction of what's happening. I mean, honest to God, the federal budget. There's so much to worry about in the federal budget, and it's so important to so many things in our day-to-day life that we don't really think. We don't think this is connected to the federal budget, but it is. And, it's become commonplace that Congress not engage in a normal act of consideration and, looking at the detail and going through the process, the committee process that it's supposed to, and we end up in just reconciliation after reconciliation, which is just bad policy, and a lot of really rash decisions get made.
You see any chance of getting beyond that?
Yeah, I do. We were able to pass a budget through typical order, through what they call regular order. But a budget did get passed last year. There were a lot of those pieces that I was concerned about, but that's how democracy works. This year, I have very little hope that we're going to be able to get a regular budget passed. It's likely going to be a concurring resolution, which just continues last year. It says, hey, we'll just do everything that we did last year.
Midterm elections,
that's exactly it. And this is particularly volatile time, politically volatile time. So
no. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What's so interesting is when I'm out, we're out knocking on people's doors and talking to them about what's going on. And so many people, more than I've ever seen, have just said, I don't pay attention to politics. I don't want to pay attention to politics. I'm just out. I'm out.
Yeah, I call it the dropout society.
Yeah.
And there's pretty good reason for it when you look at what's happening in the political world. And,
yep.
Right now, both parties are struggling internally.
That's true.
Democrats, you've got the far, far left on the one side tearing apart. Republicans got MAGA and the far right on the other side tearing it apart. And we're all suffering. And those ends make all the noise. They
make all the noise, and I think that it's really important, at least here, where we get up and go to the grocery store and do those things every day. That is there. If you put both of those extremes together, they are far from the majority of how people really want to see up. But I do think that there's a reason. You see it on the left, you see it on the right. But we have a lot of people who are really struggling on the basics right now. I can't tell you how many times I'm talking to folks who are just saying, look, my number one worry is being able to buy groceries at the end of the week, being able to, pay my heat in the wintertime. And that has become, it's always sort of a steady drumbeat of worrying about economic, paying the bills. But it is, particularly here, it is everybody. Yeah. It's our farmers. It's true in southern Saginaw County farm country as it is in inner city Saginaw, right down the road from us.
I'll come back to what I was going to talk about because you mentioned that magic word, farm.
Farm.
Where is the farm bill?
Stuck in the Senate. It is so frustrating. So frustrating. We got a farm bill out of the House, and you know what? It's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Because I would think with the agriculture in Michigan, all of our representatives on both sides of the aisle should be supportive.
I would expect that. If you talk to a farmer, anybody who has any conversations with farmers, and we all should be voting yes on that farm bill. Right now, if you look at, farmers 2 years ago were struggling because the cost of what it takes to run a farm is way higher than
the input costs.
The input costs, right? That's way higher than what the profit that you make in by selling your crop or your cattle or whatever.
Which we all understand translates to higher food prices.
It absolutely does. But now You know, there's a trade war going on. We're seeing a lot of the war in the Middle East, the cost of diesel. Listen, and honestly, if you really want to know how America is doing economically, forget the data they put out. Look at the cost of diesel, because working people use diesel.
Yep.
And when that climbs to over $6 a gallon, we've got really big problems. So I'm very worried about our farmers, and anything that we can do to help, we should be doing.
Well, and right now, that cost isn't going down.
No.
Till we solve the Iranian situation.
Yeah, and that's got to get solved. I mean, there's so many reasons why that's got to get solved. But, you know, not to steer away from, because I think it's a really important point, how expensive things have gotten. And so our farmers often are just struggling to have any sort of profit at the end of the season. But we also see our salaries really aren't rising at the same rate that the prices of everything else is. And so when you see people who worry about the basics, let alone, you know, this is where we're getting towards the end of August. This is school clothes season. Parents are very, very worried. So it's a cost issue. And I think that what we're seeing happening in our political environment with a lot of radical change and people whose ideas seem really scary it's basically just a symptom of everybody, regardless of where you are on either side of the aisle, are saying we can't keep doing the things that we are doing right now because it's not working for most people.
Yet they keep doing it.
That's right. You know, your allegiance has to be to the people that you represent. Your allegiance has to be to your community.
Constituents.
And, you know, I get a lot of flack because my votes sometimes fall on the left and sometimes my votes fall on the right. But at the end of the day, it's not a party or a donor or a stakeholder. These are the people that I work for are the people that I see in the grocery store.
That's what I want in a congressperson. And it's also what I want in a Supreme Court jurist. 100%. I don't want them to look at it left or right. I want them to look at it against the Constitution and make a decision.
Yes. Yep. And be able to really...
I want somebody who looks at a bill and says, is this good for the people?
Right. And actually, you know how you do that? Not by reading the sort of fancy schmancy memos. With all due respect, my staff writes me great memos. But at the end of the day...
the talking points.
Or the talking points. You actually have to go ask people about that. And, you know, you'll find, honestly, people don't want to pay attention to politics. But when you say things like, can we just talk about your prescription drugs? How often do you have to, you know, what does that look like? You and I have talked about this before, that it's actually a pretty good exercise. Every member of Congress should have to go sit at their, you know, you go to the Meijer pharmacy and you just sit there and listen to conversations.
Well, see me, that's my pharmacy.
Right. Well, yeah, it's most of our pharmacy, right? But when you hear, when people are in the same place buying their groceries and their prescriptions at the same time, you listen to them, you make their choices.
However, the caveat to that is that it's going to be different for everybody. For example,
that's true.
If I were asked about exorbitant drug prices, I couldn't tell you. I have 3 prescriptions and I pay $0 for all of them. So I am out of that loop.
Yeah.
I look at it differently than somebody who's on
that's true.
A cancer drug that's costing them thousands of dollars.
Autoimmune diseases. There's
autoimmune. Even these GLP-1s now. I mean, you know. So we all look at it differently. But in reality, if I'm going to be smart about it, I have to look to the future, because what I'm taking today may not be what I'm taking tomorrow.
Right.
And what's that going to cost me?
Right.
So what's good for one is usually good for everybody. Usually.
What we know right now is the way that we're doing it doesn't work. I mean, everybody I know has a story of either themselves or someone in their family that couldn't afford the drug that they were prescribed. And I'm not talking about designer drugs or vanity kinds of drugs. I'm talking the absolute basics, and
that haven't gone to generic yet. You know.
Yeah, well, even the ones sometimes that have gone to generic are pretty pricey.
Yeah.
In the more complex, newer drugs, yeah, the
ones we see advertised on television.
Oh my god. Yeah,
they want to make us doctors. They want us to go to the doctor and say,
ask
"This is
for
what
something.
I want."
Yeah. I mean that. it is dumb. We actually really should be looking
Yeah.
about whether or not. I mean, I remember I grew up at a time where drug companies could not go to commercials on that stuff.
Here's one of my favorite sayings, because of all the to do about COVID drugs and shots and now vaccines and everything. I tell people when I get sick, I do not call a radio talk show host for advice, nor do I call a politician.
Right.
I call my doctor.
You call your doctor, and you do what your doctor
And
recommends.
I do what he recommends.
You also don't do it through a internet search or social media.
I got to tell you about that. 21 years ago, I had a muscle problem.
Mm-hmm.
I built models, and I was using the substance, which I wasn't using carefully. I breathed in a lot of the stuff, and it attacked my muscles. And I had lead weights for arms and legs for a couple of months.
Oh, wow.
So I looked online to just self-diagnose,
Of course.
Found out I was dead. That was
Well,
it.
I'm so glad that wasn't right.
Yeah, me too. We're going to take a break. We're talking to Congresswoman Kristen McDonald-Rivet, and we will be back with her after these notes. We start out by talking to Terry Henney, who's out at the Ag Expo. Here's Terry.
Hey everyone, Terry Henney broadcasting today just north of St. John's, the site of the Agro Expo, the 2026 edition, which happens to be the 10th anniversary show. A decade ago, it was a vision for a premier agricultural field event, and it has grown into one of the region's most anticipated industry gatherings, and everybody involved with Agro Expo is very grateful to celebrate the milestone with each and every one of you. Special anniversary activities, including a World War II warbird flyover and a community ice cream social, goes on today, the final day here at Ag Expo. Agro Expo is open. It's been open since 8:30 this morning. It goes until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Featured speaker speaking right now, climatologist Austin Pearson. He's talking about weather considerations for effective agricultural management. More reports coming up from Agro Expo in St. John's.
We are back with you. We're talking to Congresswoman Kristen McDonald-Rivet. And we have these great discussions off air. I think we'll leave them off there. So, from where you sit now in this midterm election year, will anything get done?
I think we're going to have a really crazy lame duck. But
And no chance for a farm bill?
I hope there's a chance for the farm bill. I think that if we could get it out of committee, but the Senate Ag Committee voted it down within the last few days, and we were very hopeful. When we came home, because we're in legislative recess, we're not on vacation, but we're not in D.C. When we came home, there was a lot of chatter that the Senate was going to pass the Farm Bill. And we were sort of thinking, okay, if we can get the Farm Bill out of committee in the Senate, then there is hope that we can get it done before the end of the year. The Farm Bill has not been reauthorized since 2018. And we've been able to make some
continuing.
Just this continuing, which is just, for people in jobs that aren't bizarre like Congress. The continuation of the Farm Bill is essentially just saying, I didn't do my homework, so we have to do. We're just keep doing the same thing, and it's a failure for our farmers. And the thing that is particularly upsetting about it is that if we got the bill to the floor, I think that there are votes in the Senate.
Oh,
and
I would agree.
Often this is my first year.
That's one of the real nonpartisan issues.
Should be, yeah. It should
Farming
be.
is important to everybody. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on.
Sometimes people need to be reminded
Well,
that
sometimes they do, but for the most part, I don't think there'd be a problem getting the votes.
right. We can, and then there are some pieces that have to be worked out between the chambers.
Always.
But if we can get if the Farm Bill, there's this very very narrow road that if, when the Senate comes back, if they start to move on the Farm Bill and minimally get it out of committee, then there is some opportunity for it. And we are, I know that the will is there. A lot of times these things come down to either personality conflicts. Far too often, things don't move because of personality conflicts between the leaders. Not in a partisan way.
Which is too bad, because that disconnects from the constituents and what they need.
There's a lot in Washington that's disconnected from constituents.
I used, how do I say this nicely? I used to be a political junkie. Now it's just junk. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does. I think, there is, it's too heart draining to be a political junkie now, to watch it in the detail and the form. And some of that's social media, some of that's the business model of the 24/7 TV news that is covering the same thing hour after hour after hour.
Yeah, and then you have social media, which is just uncontrolled and unrelented.
That's true.
So I have to ask you, because I view it differently than you do. By that I mean, as an observer and a commentator, I can say what I want about politics. I can like what I see. I don't like what I see. That's fine. But I'm not in it.
Mm-hmm.
What were your surprises when you got in it in Washington? I mean, you've been in the political world for a while, but now all of a sudden you're at the seat of power in Washington.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I was first elected to partisan office in 2022. So I actually have not been doing this in this kind of role.
I've
been around it for a while. Okay, so on the positive side, the first thing that surprised me, most people in Congress are there for the right reasons. They love our country. They want to do right by people. And they particularly care about children and families. There's a lot of disagreement about what that looks like in policy, but the reality is most of them are there. The screamers and the yellers that you see in social media, where you'll see on the left a Jasmine Crockett, or on the right a Nancy Mace.
It's the same people in front of the microphones all
Yeah, I mean, and they go about their day trying to create content and not, but that's not most people. I mean, it really isn't. I always like to talk about up here, John Molinar is a really good example of somebody that when you see him move, he puts his head down and just does the work, right? He's not one of those people who stands on the Capitol steps and
right, doesn't make pronouncements.
And, it's something that Dan Kildee left to me. He said, listen, sometimes you'll be in the majority, sometimes you'll be in the minority. Work with your colleagues, and John's been really helpful to me in my first year, trying to get the Flint registry back in the budget, which he helped get done. I expect the Democrats will be in the majority in the House next session. Those things flip flop continuously; they'll always do that, and I will do the same thing. I mean, that is, I think.
So I have to ask. Theoretical.
Okay.
Democrats take the House.
Yeah.
Are they going to spend all their time going after Trump, or are they going to do the business of the world?
If we spend all our time going after Trump, that will be a 2-year majority. I have been, I have some leadership positions. I sit in the leadership team of a group called the New Dems, New Democratic Coalition. It's very middle of the road, pragmatic Democrats. I'm the vice chair of another organization. I mean, all of this to say, I sit with leadership pretty regularly, and Americans in general, and definitely people here in our area, are really tired of the finger pointing of it's their fault and no actual agendas that are going to make people's lives better. I really believe that the very first thing we need to do is to pass a sweeping anti-corruption agenda. I think that there are many Republicans who can get on board with that, and I know that the entire caucus we can get on board, but...
Hold that thought. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
Hold that thought. We'll be back. We're talking to Kristen McDonald-Rivet, Congresswoman. We will return.
Get ready, Midland.
All right, we're back with you in studio with me, Kristen McDonald-Rivet, and she, of course, is our congresswoman from the 8th district.
It's the 8th,
The 8th
yeah.
district, and we were talking about what you found when you got to Washington and the kinds of people that were there, and what happens in November governs what happens the next 2 years.
That's right.
Realistically, if I sit here right now and I'm being honest, I think the Republicans lose the House, keep the Senate. So we have a divided Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Almost seems like we do anyway right now, even though it's unified.
Right.
Talk about a disappointment for Republicans.
Oh, my
Thought,
gosh.
well, going in, we got it made, Well, guess what?
This Congress has done less than any, actually moved less legislation than any Congress in recent history. And the House in particular is pretty dysfunctional. We have already, the Senate has had 50 more legislative days than the House because, when there's conflict, the Speaker will just take us out and send us home. And when I say conflict, I mean conflict within the Republican caucus. It's a pretty spicy
if
group.
he doesn't have the votes.
And it's spicy. So I think with the Republican trifecta, the House, the Senate, the White House, I going in as a freshman thought that we would be very, very active, and that just has turned out not to be the case.
There's one refreshing thing. Maybe it's a bad word, but a lot of folks going in, Republicans thought they'd have the presidency, the Congress, and the Supreme Court, which theoretically they have a 6-3 majority.
You are with WS.
Is that the way for the producer to sort of
computers.
cover up something when they're worried about what you're going to say?
It's computers. As I was saying, there is a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yet they've proven that they don't necessarily vote in unison. And when a jurist goes to the Supreme Court, that's what I want. I don't want a Democrat or I don't want a Republican.
Yeah.
I want a jurist who's going to look at the Constitution and what's before them and make the judgment.
So let me say this, and it's a little controversial.
Good.
You're right. That's what we all want of the Supreme Court. But I don't think we can call the Supreme Court functional in any facet at this point. There is a serious ethical breach that's happening regularly in the Supreme Court, and that's because for a number of reasons. But one is there's no enforceable code of conduct. So we routinely see justices that receive major gifts, like I'm talking like vacations and tuition for their kids and that kind of stuff, from people who have cases before them, and that's not tolerated anywhere. Yeah. So I think,
but on some of the big issues, they have been surprising. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Nothing is. Don't get me wrong. Nothing is perfect.
Nothing is perfect, especially the Supreme Court. But I'm not talking about only six members. I'm talking about all 9 members.
Right. No, I understand. The court itself.
I think that we need to also talk about whether or not a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court makes any sense anymore.
Well, yeah, but you have to change the Constitution.
Yeah, you do. But we can do hard things.
Yeah. Well.
But I want to get back to this space around corruption.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Because it is. I've been working on this almost since I walked into Congress, because I really started looking at this. What do you mean that members of Congress can trade individual stocks? That's bananas.
Listen,
it's bananas.
Nuts.
So we started drafting a bill, and that became the obvious one. But what we realized is that, the system is actually set up in a way that rewards only small incremental steps in places where we need really big change, and too much is hidden from the American public. So it's not just you should not be able to trade stocks. You should not be able to be on prediction markets, which are you can go and bet on anything.
Yeah.
When we see that the president's teleprompter guy right? He's a technical operator of the teleprompter. Made over $90,000 last year because he read what was going to be fed into the teleprompter and then went out to the prediction markets and bet money on what he knew the president was going to say, right? That is layers and layers of unethical behavior. So, so I have a bill that bans prediction markets with inside information, really bans stock trading, not something that says it bans stock trading but doesn't really do it, and extends that to the court system. Because all the federal court system and the executive.
I think all government employees.
Yeah. And, I think most people would agree with you. And every time we see legislation that starts to move, it is watered down in a way that it doesn't actually do any of that. So that's the first thing that we should do.
Well, that's been kind of a history of bills starting out with great intentions, ending up so thin that they don't do the purpose that they were intended for.
That's right. That's right. We saw a bill come to the House floor right before we left that was called a ban on stock trading and didn't actually ban stock trading. So you can't just put it in the title of the bill and then water down the language.
Well, right? What did it do?
Essentially, it was a vehicle for the SAVE Act to move through, and they called it an anti. It did.
Did you look what we did?
Yes. So, I voted no. That's nonsense. It's just I'm not gonna put a performative vote up that lacks common sense. I think people demand more from us than that.
That's one of my favorite phrases, common sense.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing lacking, not just in the halls of Congress, but in lots of things
I've raised
in
6
life.
kids, I can tell you.
Yeah, lots of things in life. We seem to be lacking common sense these days.
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
Too bad.
Yeah.
It really is a shame. Because, common sense is just that. It should be obvious. You would think.
Yeah, I think when I was here a couple of years ago, I told you when I was serving the state senate, and I kept having these moments where I wanted to tap people on their shoulder and, say to them, "Does your mom know what you're doing right now? Can I have her phone number?" Again, this just gets to the place when what I learned pretty quickly, and again, Dan Kildee has been such a great advisor and friend in all of this, but your real conversations are the ones that you have in your district, not what you hear in D.C. There really is a big old bubble around the city that make it hard to get information, and that's, trust me, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of really smart, really committed people there. I don't like to tell people that everybody in D.C. is corrupt and everybody and nobody cares, because that actually is not true. But it's so far away from Auburn, Michigan.
Yeah.
That you just can't, you actually go have to start talking. And if you get away from common sense here, when you are elected by the people here, they will tell you about it in a hurry.
I have felt for a long time that we've gotten away from what's good for the constituent.
Yeah.
Now it's what's good for the party.
Yeah.
In many cases.
Yeah.
Not all. There are many in Congress who are not that way. You're one. But there are those who are just all about the party.
Yeah, I think that's right on both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. Absolutely, both sides.
On both sides. I have the distinction of being named the most bipartisan member in the delegation. And there are people who consider that a negative.
Oh, I know it. Oh.
But, I got to get up every day and look myself in the mirror, and that's about whether or not we're focusing on people here.
I've heard, people say, and I really disagree. Rush Limbaugh, when he was alive, used to say moderates don't believe in anything. Bull.
Yeah.
I
keep telling people, listen, I'm very pragmatic, but it doesn't mean that the pragmatic doesn't mean that you don't embrace bold ideas.
Yeah.
You just have to put them in place in a way that, we can actually get implemented.
Token, you also are a member of a caucus.
That's true.
And you have to respond as that caucus,
right.
too.
Right. But it's another area that's a debate of ideas. If you want to move something that's really important, you've got to talk to people about it who don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, it's the only way you find out what they have on their mind.
Well, it makes your idea better.
Well, and there's good ideas on both sides of the aisles. We've
forgotten
that.
Yeah.
All right. Take another break and be back with Kristen McDonald-Rivet right after these notes. And let's start by hearing what Terry Henney's up to at the Ag Expo.
We are broadcasting today from the 10th anniversary of Agro Expo, just north of St. John's. Attendees looking forward to the return of the popular farm safety demonstrations and irrigation.
I will come back to Terry and have his report after these notes.
Of Agro Expo, just north of St. John's. Attendees looking forward to the return of the popular farm safety demonstrations and irrigation demonstrations, which showcase practical technology, innovation, and education that continues to support today's agricultural operations. Today, in honor of the 10th anniversary, they are going to introduce Tractor Ride and Drive, which is an interactive hands-on experience for everyone ages 18 and older. This gives participants the opportunity to experience modern equipment firsthand while learning more about the latest advancements in ag industry and in ag machinery. Agro Expo 2026, the 10th anniversary show going on right now.
And we're back with you in studio. With me is 8th District Congresswoman Kristen Rivette, and talking about a number of things, but a lot of it weren't issue-oriented. Aside from the Farm Bill, which we'd all like to see get through, are there any other, major issues sitting in Congress that could move?
I think everything. There's about 3 weeks of session between now and the election, and there's not a lot that I think I can point to and say this I know will get to the president before the election. But lame duck, which is that period of time after the election till the new Congress starts, is expected to be pretty rowdy.
Yeah, nobody has to answer for anything.
Right. I mean, it's really an interesting time. In fact, our whole team right now it's August, but is getting ready for the lame duck session and making sure that everybody that we know that we're as ready as we can be for it. I have a bill that hasn't moved. That I'm trying to move through our Ways and Means Committee and then to try to get some traction. I think it's probably not going to get signed this year, but in the long term, I'd like it done next year. It's called the Working Parents Tax Credit. And it is a refundable tax credit for households with kids under the age of 3 who make under $100,000 a year. And it's a $5,500 tax credit that will help pay for all of the things that are super expensive for infants and toddlers. It requires you to work. It's done through the tax system, and is when we look at how much childcare and strollers and formula and all of these things for babies, it's just incredibly expensive. And I think it's important that we try to alleviate the tax burden on very new families that are at that income level and below. And so we've got a lot of bipartisan support for it, and it's something that I'm working really hard on.
You mentioned the $100,000 cutoff. Is there a sliding scale beyond that?
It is a sliding scale up to 100,000, benefiting obviously.
100,000 is the end of it.
Yes, 100,000 is the end of it. Right. Ideally, we make it really easy in this country to be able to afford to have a family. And I think we have to do everything we can to chip away at that. But we also, you're never going to hear me propose something that is so big that it can't pass, or it's going to make a massive increase in the federal deficit, which is something we have. Yeah. But I'm conscious of it. I'm conscious of it. So we know that when you have a baby, it adds $30,000 to your household expenses. That's just, childcare right now is somewhere between $450 and $500 a week for an infant. I mean, that's just an enormous sum of money. And we have to be able to think about, okay, who gets tax breaks, who doesn't get tax breaks, who pays what in taxes. And in that first 3 years of being a new parent, if you're working, then I think that's a space that warrants a tax cut. And so I'm really committed to it. But there's a lot of work to be done in that space.
Well, I know you're eager to get back to Washington so you can get all these things passed.
I'm going to work on it. One of 435, but I'm going to work on it.
There you go. We'll talk to you again soon, Kristen. It's always fun.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's great talking to her because she'll answer anything I ask. I like that.
I'm not a fan of the pivot. I just answer the question.
I understand that. That's good. It's rare, but it's good. News coming up next, then we'll be back with Focus on the Flip Side. And today we'll learn about Komanos Cancer Institute.
Beautiful new Florida.